All right, Revelation chapter 2, verse 8. And unto the angel of the church of Smyrna write, These things says the first and the last, which was dead and is alive. I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that he may be tried, and you shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches. And he that overcomes shall not be hurt of the second death. I remember years ago, hearing a comedy sketch involving a mother and her children. I believe it was something done by Bill Cosby at the time, and I think the setting was at a grocery store. And in any case, the comedian began to detail how the woman's children kept pushing all of her buttons, doing all the things they knew they weren't supposed to be doing, ignoring mom's direction and instruction. And as the kids turned up the disobedience, the internal pressure of their mothers built up until it reached that point of emotional explosions. You know what I'm saying. She says, "That's it. No more. I've had enough." Then the comedian went on into graphic details describing the woman's flaring nostrils and extended veins and bulging eyes, and any onlooker could immediately recognize that this was a woman who had had enough, and you didn't want to mess with her. For that mother, somewhere along the line, after the "stop that right now and do you hear me, and if you do that one more time, so help me Lord," came to the point of having enough. Now, growing up, I figured out when my mom was mad when she used my middle name. Then I knew I was in trouble. I knew she had enough. But what about us? Has life turned up the heat on us? Are we feeling crushed by its pressure? Has the hardship or tragedy got us feeling like we're at the end of our rope? Have we reached a point where we feel we have had enough and we can't take it anymore? Maybe we feel like we're there. Or maybe we're thinking we are approaching that breaking point. Maybe that's what we are thinking. But what is Yahweh thinking about our situation? Does he see things the same way we do? Talk about your tough questions to answer. Whenever we think that we've had enough, does Yahweh think that we've had enough? Here we have the first century church in Smyrna. It's been subjected to a lot of pressure and persecution. Instead of having an upbeat, joy-filled worship gathering, I can almost hear them singing, "Nobody knows the trouble I've seen." These guys were singing gloom, despair, and agony on me.
Whoa.
A couple of thousand years before the twang, nasal, hee-haw version through the airways. Many of them were thinking, "Okay, enough is enough, Lord. We think it's time you turn down the burners." And then along comes this letter from Yeshua. And surprise, surprise. Instead of Yeshua agreeing with them that they've had enough, Yeshua says, to borrow the phrase from BTO, "You ain't seen nothing yet." Now, believe it or not, there's only one primary point that I want to get from today's message. Not three, not five. Just one, and it's simply this. How you endure hardships matters more than the hardships you endure. How you endure hardships matters more than how you endure hardships. Remain faithful to him, even if doing so brings physical death. In verse 10, Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecutions for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. And by the way, this 10 days, the thing that came to my mind was, well, the Israelites were punished a year for a day when they went out to spy the land. I even checked with Joe to see if I was in the neighborhood of what I was thinking about 10 days. But the 10 days is something they knew 2,000 years ago. They knew exactly what it is. I do not know exactly what the 10 days are. But I just thought I'd throw that in there. Yeshua knows that as bad as it's been, it's going to get worse. Already been enduring physical persecution. Already some had lost jobs or business incomes because people began shunning them after they became believers. All of them were being slandered by the Jews in Smyrna. And yet Yeshua knew things were going to get worse. Soon, many of the believers in Smyrna were to be thrown into prison. Soon, some would be thrown to hungry lions. Others would be boiled in oil. Some crucified. Some covered with animal skins and tortured to death by wild dogs. Some would be covered with tar and set on fire as torches. Some would be burnt at the stake. This would be the case for one of the most famous martyrs in the early church to be burned alive, the man Polycarp. Tradition holds that Polycarp was appointed elder over the church in Smyrna by the Apostle John. Records from the early church also indicate that when Polycarp was told to deny Yeshua or face death, Polycarp answered, 86 years have I served him, and he never did me any injury. How then can I blaspheme my King and my Savior? And when the sentence was to be nailed to a stake and burned alive was given, the people piled wood around the old man and prepared to nail him to a stake. Polycarp claimed the nails wouldn't be necessary. He said, "Leave me as I am, for he that gives me strength to endure the fire will also enable me, without your securing me by nails, to remain without moving in the pile." Many have thought that the words of this letter must have coursed through Polycarp's mind, giving him strength and courage to endure, knowing that his faithfulness would be rewarded. An 86-year-old guy. Now, Yeshua knew all that would happen in the days to come. He knew about the lions and the crucifixions, the slayings by swords and burnings. But other than telling the believers at Smyrna about being cast into prison, Yeshua didn't go into detail about the various forms of persecution would take over the next few centuries. And I believe one of the main reasons Yeshua didn't go into the spelling of all of those things out is because how we endure hardships matters more than what hardships we endure. Yeshua lets the church of Smyrna know that he knows about the upcoming persecution that they will be facing, and he encourages them to remain faithful through them with the two promises. One is if they remain faithful, they will be given a crown of life, and two, if they overcome, they will not be touched by the second death, meaning they will enter his kingdom rather than being cast into the lake of fire. And what was true for the church of Smyrna is true for us today. How we endure matters more than what we endure. Yeshua said that in this life we will have trouble, and many of us can say amen to that. I'm sure whatever the trouble, whether it's illness or financial hardship or loss, understand that how you endure matters more than what you endure. Don't be like those people who let troubles come between them and the Lord. Instead of moving away from Yahweh during times of difficulty, make it an effort to move closer to Him. Keep your problems in perspective. And remember, it's when the pressure's on and times are tough that people are the most closely watching you. Here's something you can be sure of. People are watching you. You can mark it down. You can count on it. Skeptics and unbelievers are watching us. The spiritually curious are watching us. Other believers are watching us. We need so much to understand that how we endure hardships can greatly impact those around us positively or negatively. We need to realize that how we handle hardships can either significantly increase our tragedy and reduce our witness to the non-believers around us. In fact, I believe that that's one of the reasons Yahweh allows bad things to happen to believers. Yahweh knows that when a believer endures hardships well, others will notice. And then receptibility to the message of Messiah dramatically increases. I'm convinced that it is not some kind of fluke that in proportion to the world's population, the church reached its greatest numbers during this period of persecution. It happened that way because people were watching, and what they were seeing, the faith, the unquenchable hope, the courage and the endurance of so many believers while they were under attack, it all worked together to open doors for the good news about Yeshua. And people are watching you and me today. And they are observing us in action as they being influenced to open a little wider their own heart's door to receive Messiah, or they are being turned off to Yeshua. To be sure, people are watching us. But most importantly, Yahweh is watching us. Another thing I don't think is a simple coincidence is the fact that the name Smyrna means myrrh. Myrrh was a sweet-smelling perfume that was not only worn by the living, but also used in the first century embalming practices. And when the believers at Smyrna were persecuted, their endurance rose up before Yahweh as something sweet and beautiful. Can the same be said of us? Think about the difference between aromas like a lilac and a skunk. Which would you let into your house? Which would you keep out? So then, when the pressure is on and things get difficult, when you're being unjustly pushed around and people you thought you could count on for support have turned on you and are squeezed the joy out of things, do you maintain a sweetness of spirit like the believers of Smyrna? Do you react to life's hardship, and do you respond to the crud others dump on you by raising a little stink of your own? Pretty obvious, isn't it, which kind of lifestyle a person will need to be welcomed into Yahweh's kingdom? In 2 Timothy 2 verse 3, Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Yeshua Messiah. In Romans 8:28, And we know that all things work together for the good of them that love Yahweh, to them who are the called according to his purpose. All things includes hardships. And in Hebrews 12, enduring hardship is associated with undergoing discipline. In Hebrews 12 verse 2, looking unto Yeshua, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the stake or the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of Elohim. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest you be wearied and faint in your minds. You have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin. And you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastising of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loves he chastises, and scourges every son whom he receives. If you endured chastising, Elohim deals with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chastises not? But if you be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then are you bastards and not sons. Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh, which corrected us, and we have gave them reverence, that we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits, and live? For they verily for a few days chastised us after their own pleasure, but he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness. Now no chastising for the present seems to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterwards it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. Wherefore, lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees. How we endure hardships matters more than what hardships we endure. Now turn your thoughts to Messiah, Yeshua, the one who has promised never to leave us or forsake us. He's there throughout our entire lives, cheering us on. He wants to see us cross the finish line so he can place a victor's crown upon you. This letter to Smyrna speaks to us. Remain faithful, and you will come to know victory and the joy of being welcomed into his kingdom. May Yahweh bless you with the endurance and finished race.